Skyrim is a rich and immersive universe. You can pretty much be whatever you want. Whatever your morals are, whatever your playstyle, you can create a character that suits that desire. And that's one of the reasons why it became quickly one of my favorite video games to play. I've played the Dawnguard DLC as well as the Dragonborn DLC and the Hearthfire, and they're all fantastic. But with that said, this game is starting to show its age, and here are 14 updates that I would make to the gameplay and to the story in order to make it feel fresh. So without further ado, let's begin. The first change I would make, guys out there, you're gonna love this, I would make you capable of marrying Serana, provided that you cure her of vampirism. Because in universe, if she's been cured of her vampirism, she's no longer tied to Molag, and there's no reason why she wouldn't be free to marry whatever guy that she wants. But not just Serana. What about these other beautiful Lady Nords out there, like Maven Blackbriar, for example? Or even, what if you're playing as a male character, and one of the female characters loses her husband? I don't know, maybe he gets eaten by a dragon, or killed by a cultist that's trying to stop you from killing Mirak. There's no reason why a widowed character would not be able to get remarried in Skyrim. And you should be able to marry a wider range of NPC races. For example, the majority of females in the game that you're eligible to marry are either Nords or Imperials. You have a few Dunmer women you can marry, and there's literally only one marriageable Altmer female in the base game. They need to have a wider variety of Altmer and Dunmer, and maybe even if that's your thing, Orsimer, but I think the orcs are disgusting. I don't see why you would want to marry one of them. I believe the most beautiful female orc in the game, I'm forgetting her name now, but you'll know her story. Her mother has you bring her a sword that says, "Don't come back." You should be able to marry more of the adult NPCs in the game. There's no reason why your list is so limited. Just think about your status. You're the Dragonborn. You are the most powerful man on all the face of Tamriel. You are also probably the richest after making all those gold rings to get your smithing skills up. You are the richest. You own the Thainship of all 9 holds. You are also Stormblade. You're also the Archmage of Winterhold. The list goes on and on. You have the highest status of any guy in the entire universe. There's no reason why Serana or Maven Blackbriar or anyone of that nature should turn you down. You should have more marriageable options. One of the females that I think a male character would be more privy to marry would be someone like Ingen Blackbriar. Because then, if you don't want to marry Maven, you're still in the Blackbriar family. So I think that should be a choice. Or maybe even someone like Sapphire, once you help her with her problem, help her find her dad. That would have been an amazing side quest. You get Sapphire as a follower, and you take her to her dad in Solstheim, and you have a great big family reunion, and then after that, she responds to your Amulet of Mara. That would have been a great move to have for Skyrim. That would have been something to make the family drama aspects of it feel even more immersive. Because that's one of Skyrim's strengths. If you want to play the more soap opera-y side quests, you can do that. If you want to feel like you're more in a Dungeons and Dragons Battle Royale type style, you can do that. So you need more options of what you can do socially. Now let's talk about the gameplay mechanics a little bit. The second change that I would make is that, let's stop and think about this. When you use one-handed attacks, your one-handed skill increases. When you use alteration spells, your alteration skill increases. Is there any reason why running doesn't increase your stamina? You should be able to level up your stamina through how much you run across the wilderness or how many power attacks you use. In real life, running and using power attacks is how you train your stamina, so why not make that in the video game? Your stamina does not need to be tied to how high up you level, because if anything, I have to waste points that I could be spending on health and my magicka meter. I have to waste it on stamina, when stamina should just be by how much I run. Because if it's based on how much I run, then I'm more likely to travel on foot and truly immerse myself in the universe, instead of just lazily fast traveling everywhere. That might be a more rewarding experience. The third change I would make is you would have a Fortify enchantment that you can put on your clothes. Instead of having to wait until you get the Ozadol armor, I would make an enchantment that fortifies my enchantment and make a whole outfit out of it so that I can put some truly broken enchantments on my weapons and armor. The fourth change that I would make is to the children of Skyrim. The literal children that you see running around in Skyrim, the ones you can adopt. You literally only see Imperials and Nords as children. I would like to see Altmer children, Breton children. I'd like to see maybe some child orcs, or even some child Dunmer, because let's say you don't want to play as a Nord. Let's say you wanted to play as a Dark Elf, and you wanted to have a Dark Elf family. Maybe you play as a male Dark Elf, and you marry Berlina Marion, or maybe you play as a female Dark Elf and you want to marry Neloth. I would make him marriageable too. Let's say you want to do that and you want to have a family. Does it really make sense to have a Dark Elf husband and wife having Nord kids? If anything, from a social standpoint, someone might think you kidnapped them. But from a gameplay standpoint, you really would like to have children that align with whatever race you play as. Even if they had little Argonian eggs that you can hatch or something like that, or however the Argonians, they come from the history tree or something. I would make something of that nature where you have more availability of different children species that you can have in your family. The fifth change I would make would be to the companions. I would actually make a recurring quest. Once you become Harbinger of the Companions, I would make a recurring quest to go to war against the Volkihar vampires. Or instead of that lame Glory of the Dead mission, I would make the final mission going to war with the Volkihar vampires and being able to truly prove why werewolves are superior. Because that's one thing I feel like this game failed to tap into. In other lore where you have vampires and werewolves, they kill each other. Think of the Underworld series, for example. I would make an ability to tap into that. I would have that after you avenge Kodlak and cure him of his lycanthropy, I would have a mission where you as a werewolf, as well as the inner circle, you turn into werewolves and you go fight a squad of vampire lords. And your job is to just carve through all of them, tear them down, unlocking perks along the way. Speaking of which, those stupid perks need to be faster to obtain, because they seem to be a bit slow in game. The sixth change that I would make would be, I would make all enchantments upon weapons and armor disenchantable, unlockable. For example, imagine if you could enchant all of your clothing articles with the enchantment that's in the Archmage's robes. Now all of your spells basically cost nothing to cast. That would be cool. Or imagine, one of the things that we have a problem with in Skyrim is the fact that while you do have enchantments that reduce the magicka to cast a spell, you don't have very many enchantments that make the spell stronger. So if you're playing on Legendary, in the late game, the master spells are pretty much worthless. Imagine you're trying to do a lightning storm and it's not doing enough damage per second against that dragon. What would be the point of using it? Plus you can't even move while you're using it. So I would take the spells, for example, that are in the Zakrisios, the Ozidol, and the Dukan masks. I would make you able to disenchant those and gain those enchantments and put them in your armor. Imagine if you had an armor that was chock full of fortify destruction spells, as well as the spell that makes lightning spells stronger. Imagine if all of your outfit was enchanted with that. You could really do some damage against mages and dragons, for example. The seventh change I would make has to do with the damn Thieves Guild. I find the Thieves Guild to be a very frustrating faction to play for, because all of the Radiant quests that you have to do to restore the guild back to its former glory are in a random order. What if I want to do all of the Solitude missions and then do the special Solitude mission first? I can't do that. I have to take a job, hope it's in Solitude, because again, these are random, and if it's not in Solitude, I have to decline the job and then choose another job and hope it's in Solitude. I would make you able to choose when and where you do all of the different quests. For example, I would make it that Delvin only gives you jobs that pertain to Solitude. Vex only gives you jobs that pertain to Markoth. I might make it that Tonelia, for example, only gives you the jobs dealing with Whiterun, and maybe Vekel only gives you the jobs that deal with Windhelm. I would make a separate thief give you jobs for each location. That way, you can fill those quests up that way without having to worry about it being random. I'm sure you guys that love to play as a Nightingale would deeply appreciate that. Now, the 8th change I would bring about has to do with the shape-shifting abilities. So, as the Dragonborn, you can shapeshift into a skeever. Actually, they cut that. I'm just joking. You can shapeshift into a werewolf or a vampire lord. The vampire lord form is pretty much worthless if you're playing against opponents that have any kind of agility. The werewolf build is awesome, but late game it's useless because the werewolf strikes aren't strong enough. Unless, of course, you play as an orc and go into berserker mode, then turn into a werewolf, then those damage multipliers stack on top of each other. But what can you not play as? A dragon. I would make there be a shout that you learn that literally transforms you into a dragon. That way you can truly live out the destiny of what it is to be Dragonborn. Now, when you use the bin wheel shout on a dragon, you're able to get a bird's eye view of Skyrim. Now let's imagine that, similar to transforming into a werewolf or transforming into a vampire lord, you could literally turn into a dragon. And all of the shouts you know are now amplified, and you can use them on people, and then you would have to find a private mountain or something to transform back lest you catch a bounty. So it would be cool to truly feel like a dragon. Maybe that would change the storyline a little bit. Instead of needing Odahviing to take you to Skuldolphin, you could just transform into a dragon and fly there yourself. Or maybe you could go back to Skuldolphin after beating Alduin if you transform into a dragon and fast travel to that location. So these would be some cool immersion aspects of truly feeling like you are one with the Dova. The 9th change I would make would be to the actual Skyrim war itself. So you guys know that I tend to play as a Stormcloak. I favor that side. You hear a lot about taking it to the elves. That's what Galmar Stonefist says is the next move for the Stormcloaks after they take over Skyrim. Why can't we show some of that? Imagine if they had some side quests. For example, after you've won the Civil War, you've completed some other missions, you get a letter from the courier telling you that Ulfric Stormcloak is summoning you back to the battle. And Ulfric Stormcloak gives you a mission where you go to Somerset Isles, you might take a boat or something like that, and you literally start taking it to the elves. Now, you may think, well, how are they going to put a whole other region in the game? The same way they did with Solstein, where you have Captain Gallon take you to Solstein the first time, and then after that you can fast travel. Why can't they build a small little world about the same size as Solstein, but on the other side of Skyrim, maybe on the western side, and make you able to take a boat or a camel or whatever to Somerset Owls and have some squad mechanics and have some battles take place where you're literally starting to actually cut down the Aldmeri Dominion. Because you get a little bit of taste of the Aldmeri Dominion when you're doing the diplomatic immunity missions, but there'd be a better immersion of truly why these elves are horrendous or why they are to be feared. Because based on the diplomatic immunity missions, I got the sense that the elves are pretty crappy fighters. If you have enough ability to do lightning spells, you disable them from using their magicka, and in a combat scenario, they're actually pretty garbage fighters. And because of what I saw in the diplomatic immunity missions, I failed to see how the Empire possibly could have lost to them. They're quite trash fighters. I think the Draugr Death Lords are more of a challenge than the Thalmor are. So make me understand why the Thalmor are to be feared. Give me some tough battles that involve them. That would be something that would be amazing to see. The 10th change I would make would be to the children themselves. As it stands now in Skyrim, the only way to actually have children is to adopt them. Which is okay if that's your thing, but I'd like there to be a mechanic where you and your wife can actually get together and make them. And no, I don't mean showing the process. Calm down. What I mean is something quite similar to if you've ever played the Pokemon games, you can drop 2 Pokemon off at the breeder and then they produce an offspring. Why can't there be something like after you get married, you and your spouse can get together and select the traits that your kid's going to have? After all, when you started the Skyrim game, you got to select your own traits and select your name. Why can't you go through a character select, trait select screen where you get to select what your child is going to be and look like? So for example, you're playing as a dark elf, your wife is a dark elf, then you should be able to choose the traits of make a dark elf kid to live in your house. And you should be able to choose the traits just like you chose your own when you started the game. Or if you're a Nord and you married a dark elf, or married some other mer, then you should get the choice to make an alt mer, or make a man mer, otherwise a Breton child. Because apparently the Bretons themselves are a mixture of human and elves. There should be more expansion on the type of children you can make in the game, and they would just be little NPCs that act just like the kids that you adopt. The 11th change I would make would be to the essential tags on characters. Now, in case you don't know what an essential tag is, the essential tag is on certain characters and it makes them immortal. It makes it that when you deplete their health down, instead of actually dying, they just drop to one knee and start crawling around on the ground until they recover, and you can't actually kill them. So characters with the essential tag include, for example, the Jarls. None of them are killable. Maven Blackbriar's not killable. Certain characters are unkillable until the part of the quest where they're supposed to die. As an example, within the Thieves Guild, Mercer Frey is immortal until you're supposed to kill him at the statue of Erkingthad at the very end of that quest. I would make it so that after the Civil War is over, all the Jarls that were against you can be killed. As an example, after the Stormcloaks take over, I would like to actually be able to kill Sidgeir, because he's an asshole, and he deserves nothing less than a dagger through the chest. Or, for example, why can't we kill that Imperial woman that keeps walking around talking about how much of a fool she thinks Skull the Elder is? She needs to be cut down a peg or two. So I would remove the essential tags from most of the NPCs in the game. The only ones I would leave it on would be your spouse, your children, and perhaps some of the NPCs that need to be there, like the shopkeepers. Except for Belethor. Belethor can stay mortal, he's an asshole. Moving on. The 12th change that I would make would be to the Civil War quests. I would actually make you feel like the Stormblade. Or if you want to play as the Legate, don't know why you would, but if you want to be the Legate, that's fine. I would actually give you a squad of followers where you can actually tell them what directions to go in. You can actually feel like a commander, not where you just get your orders from Galmar or from Legate Rika, and then you just follow what they tell you. I would make you able to have groups of men that you lead into battle. The 13th change I would make would be to the shouts themselves. You can level up the strength of your spells by unlocking the master level spells, for example. And yes, you can get the third shout within the shout itself, but shouts, besides the slow time shout, pretty much become worthless in terms of dealing damage to your enemies. The only shouts that are useful in battle in the late game are slow time, elemental fury, maybe whirlwind sprint if you need to get out of there, and perhaps storm call. But fire breath, ice breath, all of the shouts that deal direct damage, they're so worthless in the end game. I would actually make you able to level those up continuously so you can keep them relevant. And the final change I would make would be to the follower system. I would make you able to have 5 followers. Imagine you recruit 5 characters to be in your squad. You give them all Daedric armor and Daedric swords, and you just walk them through the dungeon and just watch them tear everything up. How satisfying would that be? And then these followers would be able to have conversations with one another with unique dialogue. Halo 3, for example, has that. Sometimes your 2 ODSTs will start telling jokes with each other. That is something that you should have. An example in Halo 2, for instance, would be when you have 5 Marines following you in the mission Gravemind. I would make you able to have that kind of dynamic throughout Skyrim. And that's what I would do to update the game. Let me know what you think in the comments below.